Okay, hi everyone and good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name's Joanna Hartzger and I'll be your host for today's session, which will last around 45 minutes, and there'll be opportunities to ask questions as well. So in a second I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lindsay Teal. Lindsay is a member of our communications and business engagement team, and she's worked on the development of many of the staff engagement materials, and she'll be sharing her knowledge with you today. So as I said, throughout the webinar you'll have a chance to ask any questions that you want to ask us about staff engagement. So just fire away and we'll have a session partway through. So just type your question into the box that's on the screen just now, and we'll answer those. Also, if you enjoy tweeting, you can tweet your question to us as well at ResourceScott, and if you use that hashtag ResWebinar, we'll be able to answer your question. What we'll do now is hand over to Lindsay.
Fantastic, thanks Jo, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Today the aim of the webinar really is to show you how to engage your staff on resource efficiency initiatives generally, but in particular lighting, and I hope to be able to give you some of the tools that you need to be able to do this effectively and as time efficiently as possible, as time is such a precious resource. Now, before we kind of really get going with the content, I'd just like to hold a quick poll just to assess how engaged you feel your staff are in your organisation as far as saving energy. So that poll should be coming on screen with you now, and if you could just select your answers, and we'll wait for some of those to come in, and this will just give us an idea of how engaged you feel people are in your organisation.
We've got quite a few people saying fairly.
Yeah. Quite mixed. It's quite spread across fairly, only sometimes, and not very. So I think most of the answers are probably in now, so Jo, just share them with you on screen and you can see the spread of what people are saying. So we've got 58% of people feel that they are fairly engaged, and only 33% only sometimes, and 8% not very. So that's good. I mean, obviously quite a few people are fairly engaged, so there'll definitely be some things for you in here, and for the people that are only sometimes engaged and not very, then it's perfect for you as well, so it should really cover off something for everybody. So if we get going, I think I'll just kick off really by showing a quick example of the power of engaging staff on one simple measure, and that is with... Oh, I think there's some problems with the screen. Hold on, I'll just double check. Sorry about this, everybody. That should be on screen now. Okay, sorry, apologies for that. So if we take a look at a simple behaviour change, and that is when people might be saying that they normally just leave the lights on when they leave your organisation because the cleaners are going to turn them off when they're done. Now this, I'm sure, is quite common practice, but if you start to actually look at what impact this could have, say for instance people normally leave around 5 to 6 o'clock and the cleaners don't arrive till 8 o'clock, then there's a daily saving of potentially 2 hours of lighting there. And if we start to look and actually calculate what that could mean, so say for instance there's 158 watt lamps in use, and the lighting is used per hour is 5,800 watts, that's 5.2 kilowatts. The potential saving from just those 2 hours is 11.6 kilowatts a day. And if you work on the basis of 240 days per year on site, then the total energy saved could be in the region of 2,784 kilowatts a year. And that, if your electricity costs are around 13 pence a kilowatt, which is what we kind of take as an average, then the potential saving could be in the region of £362. Now this might seem like a relatively small figure, but you can see just from one small activity how that could really create a bit of an impact, and also show the power of engaging staff in other ways and in other areas. So I think it's quite a powerful example, and something that just to bear in mind as we go through the rest of the presentation. So as that example illustrated, by engaging staff you will definitely be able to see some reduced costs, increase productivity, and it's definitely something that can help enhance the brand of your organisation. As organisations, it's more and more important now that they're really showing how resource efficient they are, and it also helps to attract and keep the very best employees, because as people we want to work for an organisation that cares and is doing the most that it can to reduce its impact. And of course it minimises wasteful practices so that you're not using resources unnecessarily. But engaging staff can be challenging, and we all know that. That's why we're here today. And I think one of the things, the most important areas that proves to be a challenge is time. And this really has two meanings. Firstly, if you think of big well-known campaigns which are asking for a behaviour change, such as drink driving or smoking, these can take years to start to have an impact. And there's actually been a recent study that shows that a change can take 66 days of someone doing it daily to actually become installed as a habit. So you can see that, you know, change is not simple for somebody, and it just shows that you need to expect things to move sometimes relatively slowly, and it's really important that you stay enthusiastic and that you celebrate all the little successes that you can. And secondly, time is also a factor for yourselves, and it's time that you can dedicate to help affecting a change in your organisation. Often people are squeezing the resource efficiency role that they have into their normal day-to-day job, and this means that time is extremely precious, and the time to actually sit back and think about the ways to effectively engage staff is sometimes just not available. The other thing is that benefits can be more difficult to quantify, and I've obviously started with an example which is showing a cost benefit of engaging staff into something simple, but it's not always as simple as that to quantify, and especially if you're undertaking a few initiatives at one time, such as implementing lamp replacements or lighting control measures, then it can be a little bit more difficult to show what exactly just staff engagement is delivering. And a way to maybe combat this is to make sure you really understand your usage data before you even start. And we've had quite a lot of training in our webinars before about that. So we have lots of guidance on the website, or by calling our helpline if you'd like any help to understand, you know, what usage data you have available to you and what it means. The third thing is resources. And that's of course linked to time, but access to resources can make staff engagement difficult, and developing materials such as stickers, posters, email templates can really take up precious time. And it's hopefully today actually I'll be able to show you some of the free resources we've got to make it as efficient as possible any time that you do have to dedicate to this. And finally, it's people that can make staff engagement difficult, and that is because different people need different approaches in how you ask them to change their behaviour. And it's not just as simple as understanding that similar people will need to be communicated in a similar way to change their behaviour. And a great way to illustrate this is actually just by a really quick example. And I suppose sometimes I ask this as a bit of a quiz, but I can't ask you to do that today. But if you look at the example there, we're talking about two males who were both born in 1948, and they're both British, both on their second marriage, both from affluent, well-known families. And hopefully you're screaming at your computer screen with the answers, but I'll put you out your misery. And the two people I'm talking about are Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne. Now obviously these two people are polar opposites, and it really highlights that you really do have to make sure your message is varied and delivered through as many channels as possible in different ways to really engage with these different sorts of people. And yeah, so I think by keeping that in mind, it's important not to be disheartened if things are proving challenging, because it can be difficult, but hopefully with all the things we're going to highlight today, it means that it can be simpler. So there's lots of theory behind behaviour change, you know, from nudge theories and states of readiness and stakeholder mapping, but it's important to know that we believe it can be simple, and you don't need a psychology degree to actually understand and affect the change in your organisation. And one of the simplest things I think is to use this 4E's model. Now that almost makes it scarier than it is, but it's essentially just 4 words, and that is to enable, engage, exemplify and encourage. And I'll just quickly briefly introduce what each of these mean, but if you always keep these in your mind, I think you're going to be quite a long way towards effecting a change. So first of all, enable, and that's really about giving people the skills and the knowledge that they need to be able to make a change. And in the case of lighting, it's about highlighting what behaviours you want to see and making sure that they have all the information they need to be able to do those behaviours. So for instance, are your lights labelled effectively? Do people know how to switch off the lights? Which might sound like a silly statement, but I know we've all been faced with a huge panel of lights and we're really not sure where to begin, and we start randomly selecting different ones to turn off and turn on. And that can be really daunting for people, and in fact it means that often they will just choose not to select any lights to turn off. So it's about making sure that people have that knowledge and that their awareness of resource efficiency is obviously important as well, and the benefits of that. The next one is to engage staff, and of course that again might seem simple, but it's about communicating clearly, using all the channels that you have available to you, and definitely not preaching, making sure that you're being fun and engaging and talking to people, not just sending emails or using notice boards, but sitting down one-to-one to people, having brown bag lunches or drop-in sessions, making sure that you're using everything that you possibly can to involve them in the process. Asking them for feedback so that if there are issues about why they can't actually change their behaviour, you're capturing them really early on and figuring out the best way to address them. And you want to make sure as well that you're explaining the benefits. Why are you asking people to turn off lights and why is it important? Because if you just deliver the message that you want somebody to switch off their lights without the context of why it's important and why it's important to the organisation, there's a good chance that they won't really see the value in their behaviour and switching off. Third one is exemplify, and that's about making sure that your senior managers and your influencers are bought into any initiatives that you're launching, and that they can really be kind of infiltrated in your organisation across departments and at different levels in the organisation, and really bring everybody along on that journey of demonstrating this new behaviour. And the final one is encourage. And that's about perhaps looking to develop incentives. You might want to run competitions, and that's of course keeping it fun and engaging and friendly. But a good way to do that might be if you've got different departments or different sites within your organisation. You might make a commitment, for example, for lighting to reduce your lighting costs by say 10% within a 2-month window, and you could maybe hold a competition between different sites so that there's a good bit of rivalry there, and it can really start to spur people on to take part. It's important to maybe highlight the importance you place on resource efficiency and saving energy, and that could be by including it in somebody's job description, so right from the start they're understanding the priority that you place on that. And you want to always report back the progress. As I said at the start, things might move slowly, but you want to always highlight every small benefit that's being had from your improvements, and making sure that you always say thank you as well to everybody in your organisation, because they want to feel good about this new behaviour, and your job is to make sure that they do that. So at Resource Efficient Scotland, we were aware of this kind of model and how to make sure that you're addressing these 4E's, but we were also really aware of the challenges that I highlighted at the start, and that was, the time and the lack of resources that you might have time to develop. And we did a little bit of, going out there, talking to organisations and asking them what would be of benefit so that we could identify exactly where we could add value and make things as simple as possible as far as engaging staff. So as you can see on screen, we spoke to a variety of different organisations, but here's a couple of highlights from Amanda Dorns at Dundonald Links, Martin McCrimmon at CMS Enviros, and Saoirse Hickey at APS Group. And really the main things that we got from that, that task was that people really are crying out for materials and resources. They want anything that can save them time. They want training and resources to help develop skills. And we've been able to go away and take what that those gaps and try to develop materials, and I'll introduce those to you today. So as I said, from talking to organisations, we've managed to develop materials, and I suppose in a way a step-by-step process that we feel is important when you're running anything to engage staff. And those three main areas are green teams, staff training, running campaigns. And I'll talk just through each of those three things today, and specifically in the kind of third point I'll run through what it looks like to actually run a switch off lighting campaign in your organisation. So if we take a look at the first two, which is about building the foundations for change, that's green teams, which can help really be the building block, and training staff so they understand the importance. And I think we're just going to run a quick poll here to understand if people do have an effective green team. And that's coming on screen now, and the answers are yes, no, we used to, and not sure. And that might be that you've had a green team in the past, or you have one now, but they're not being effective, and in which case select that answer that you used to. So yeah, so quite a few.
Pretty evenly split.
Yeah.
Some people 50% yes, 50% no.
I think it's interesting that I thought there'd be a little bit more of people that had perhaps used to have green teams and they had failed, because we have heard that a lot. Joe will just share those results on screen with you now. So the final outcome is 64% of you do feel that you have an effective green team, and 36% if you don't. So again, the 36% of you, I think what I'm going to talk through for a couple of minutes next will be extremely beneficial. And for those of you that have an effective green team, I think there'll definitely be resources in there that will be of benefit to make sure that you maintain that and that you maintain momentum. So we're just sharing the slides back on screen now. So, as I said, looking at green teams, we believe there are 7 steps to an effective green team, and I'll just run through what each of those mean and also the resources that we have actually to address each step. So the first step is to get your senior management support. Now this is really critical because that gives credibility to your green team, and it helps encourage staff to be involved, and it also helps to break down any barriers that you might be having. So we've created a green team management presentation which you can download from our website from the URL on screen, and it's fully editable, and you can take that, tailor it to exactly what you need, make it into your own organisation's format if that's what's important to you, add in any company targets, and if you want any more support with that, then of course get in touch and we can help. But I think it's an excellent resource. It's also got a script in there, so it's an excellent resource if you're not quite sure how to deliver the type of presentation that you need to deliver to get your senior management bought in. So I'd really encourage everybody to go on there and download that from the website. The second point I think is extremely critical, and that's about choosing the best people for your green team. And that's not necessarily always about choosing the people who are the most enthusiastic, because of course they're important, but you have to make sure that you're choosing people with the appropriate attributes and skills to be part of your green team. And by skills, I don't necessarily always just mean the resource efficiency skills. It's important that people are excellent communicators, they are influential and engaging, and they are the types of people that can really get people motivated to be involved. So it's really important that you look at the makeup of your green team and that you make sure you're selecting the people that really do give you the best representation from your organisation, and that they have all the right skills that you need to be able to make that a success. To help you do that, we've got a recruitment poster which you can print from the website. You can use that on your notice boards, of course. You can use it on your emails. You can deliver, hand it out in meetings. Any way that you feel is valuable, and that will really highlight again those attributes that you're looking for and why it would be useful for people to join that green team. So things like it'll help enhance your CV. You'll receive training, and you'll obviously help to minimise the impact of your organisation on the environment. We've got green team member job specifications and description, and again that's a really important aspect. it might seem quite a formal way to set up a green team, but even if your job description is asking people to take part for an hour a month or 2 hours a quarter, whatever it can be that they can dedicate to that green team, by formalising and actually outlining a job description, you're showcasing not only the skills and the attributes that you want from an individual, but that you're also showing the value that the organisation is putting on that role, and you're not just bolting it on to somebody's existing job. We've also got recruitment green team letters to managers. So that's about breaking down the barriers you might have perhaps at department level, where managers are saying that their people in their team don't have time to take part in green teams. So this can be used to help break down those barriers. The third point is to define the roles for your green team members. So often people fail to deliver on a project or anything really if they don't know what's expected of them. So by issuing an appointment letter, which will lead on from that job description that we just talked about, you're really enabling somebody to understand what's expected of them, and therefore they're much more likely to deliver. So again, it seems like a formal process to include an appointment letter, but by doing so I think it really will help make people understand the value that you place on that. The fourth point is to introduce your green team. So that's really important so that people also will realise how valuable that you see their role, but it's also giving everyone in your organisation understanding of who they can go to if they don't quite understand something, or they've got some ideas, or they're finding something, they don't really understand why something's being implemented, and they can go to a member of that green team and they can help address that issue and stop it growing into something that might be a barrier to your change. And again, we have what's on screen now, which is our Introduce Your Green Team poster, which can be downloaded from the website. Fifth point is to hold a kick-off meeting with your green team. You want to do this as quickly as possible, and you want to make sure that these meetings are as meaningful as possible. So initially you're wanting to highlight all of the different initiatives and actions that you might want to cover as a green team, and this can be quite varied at the start. You don't necessarily want to be picking the ones that you're going to start with first, but it's about capturing all those ideas and highlighting all the different areas you want to address. And we've created a green team kick-off meeting template, which has got lots of information on there to help guide your first meeting, and some of that might be valuable and some of it might not, but you can just take exactly what you need from that, and it means that you don't need to spend time ahead of that meeting preparing too much, so it really should save some time. Point 6 is to develop and begin implementing your green team action plan. Now that's about taking all those initial ideas and putting them into an action plan, which is going to obviously have focus and timescales, and making sure that you are going to be able to deliver on what you say. You definitely want to focus on your quick wins first, so that you can take small steps which are successful and really sell the benefit of your green team to the organisation. If you're having difficulty coming up with ideas for your action plan, we have got a tool called the Savings Finder, which is an excellent online tool. It only takes perhaps 5 minutes to complete. It's got some simple questions, and then at the end of it you will get a bespoke report, and in that report we'll have the actions that you can focus on, and you can pick the ones that suit your organisation best. And the seventh point to running an effective green team is to maintain momentum. So you want to hold green team meetings at regular intervals, and you want to discuss your progress against targets and identify any issues of your initiatives, and identify corrective action that you need to take. You want to make sure you're sharing any new ideas, good practice, and thinking about perhaps forthcoming campaigns, and I'll go on to talk a little bit more about campaigns in a second. During your meetings you also might want to invite different external stakeholders. It might be us. We might come along and talk to your green team about the importance of certain aspects or initiatives, or you might want to invite suppliers or anyone else you think could be key to the success of your green team. And then, as I mentioned, you want to be running those campaigns and making sure you've got a pipeline of initiatives that you can focus on, and again I'll talk to you a bit more about detail about that. The final part of those kind of foundations and building blocks to making sure you've got everything in place to create and engage staff is staff training. And you can do a lot to obviously reduce your organisation's energy, water and raw material costs through changing equipment and processes. In our next webinar we'll focus on that from a lighting perspective. But by having training that's suitable for your organisation, it really will maximise any improvements. And it, of course, will, if we think about those 4 E's, give your staff everything they need to be able to actually enable them to be involved in your initiatives and understand. So before we move on to the next slide, we're just going to do another poll, and it's to understand whether or not you run regular resource efficiency training. So yeah, Joe's just launching that on screen now.
The results are just coming in. And actually quite a high proportion of people are saying no, and they don't run regular resource efficiency training for staff. It's going down a little bit now.
So Joe, just share those results on screen. I think it's actually, I'm really surprised by those results. I thought there would be around 50% perhaps of people that would run regular training, and then the other two would be split. But really interestingly, and I suppose an opportunity as a result of this webinar, because I'll talk about all the free materials we've got, is that you can introduce this, because I think it's really important. So 40% of people say no, and 50% have said yes they do, but it's not regularly. So yeah, I think that's a really big opportunity as a result of this webinar for you to go away and start introducing staff training. So we'll just bring the slides back up. Sorry, we seem to be having a problem with the slides. I'll just... Okay, I think they're back up now. Everyone should be able to see the slides. Sorry about that. Okay, so moving on. So staff training really is about understanding what training needs you've got, and you know, it's definitely vital to think about introducing a more structured staff training. So you need to also think about the different people within your organisation, and perhaps the way that will address the training needs more specifically. So on screen now you'll see that we've got a list of some of the training resources that we have available. The first of which is resource efficiency at work. And that's a more kind of beginner introductory level. We've also got Toolbox Talks, which again, thinking about the way that people might actually need training to be delivered. It's a way to deliver training quickly and on site, perhaps people that aren't based at desks. And that third one there is the Green Champions training, which is slightly more advanced, and it's for the person that maybe has taken part in resource efficiency at work and is keen to learn more, or definitely for anybody that's part of a green team. It's a really, really beneficial resource for them, for sure. So if we look at resource efficiency at work first, it's just been covered there by the resources which you can see on screen, but we've essentially got a 20-minute presentation which you can deliver maybe annually or for people when they're joining an organisation. And we've also got a quiz which is part of that, which will run over what you've covered in the 20-minute video, and as a result of completing the quiz, there's a certificate, which is obviously a really nice thing for staff to get. It really makes them feel like they've achieved something at the end of that. And you know, that's available on our website, so you can either deliver it from the website, or if you would like to host that on your own website or your own intranet, then we'd be more than happy to provide that file for you for the video and all the different resources. So don't hesitate to get in touch with a member of the team or myself, and we'll be able to get that to you. As I mentioned, we've also got some Toolbox Talks. Now those cover water efficiency, energy efficiency and waste segregation more generally. So if any of those are of use to you, then of course go on the website and download them. But I would suggest thinking about ways that you can develop Toolbox Talks that create, you know, for your own specific needs. So of course for today it might be really beneficial to create one for lighting. So say for instance, which I'll talk about in just a second, you might label your lighting to enable people to understand what they can and can't switch off. So from that you might want to create a Toolbox Talks which outlines why you've labelled the lighting, why it's important that people switch off, and exactly what you want them to do in a really clear way. And again, you might do it for recycling or even equipment switch off, such as PCs and monitors. But the thing to remember is to always keep it short and just make sure you outline the benefits and then the exact guidance for the behaviours that you want to see in a really kind of quick, succinct way. The final training is our Green Champions training, and as I say, it's slightly more for kind of building on that resource efficiency at work training. And it is, we've actually had quite, hundreds of organisations now have gone through this training, and we've had excellent feedback. And it's something that you might look to do at lunchtimes or, a quick half an hour at the weekend, whenever kind of fits in with your schedule. And it's a series of online training modules, and it covers everything on wastewater and energy and gathering data, and of course a bit about staff engagement as well. So it really is an excellent tool, and you get a certificate at the end as well, and it's something that you could definitely use to enhance your CV as far as resource efficiency. So just before we move on, we're just going to run a quick poll, and it's just to understand, again, just for our information really, whether or not you provide resource efficiency training to new starts as part of their induction. And that's just on screen now, so it'd be interesting to see what the results are based on the fact that our previous poll, we didn't have that many that said that they included resource efficiency training as regularly. So the results are coming in, they're quite interesting, Joe. I mean, obviously there's at the moment it's around 56% of people are saying yes, they do hold resource efficiency training for new starts. So compare that to I think it was perhaps about 10 or 11% that in the previous poll said that they included regular resource efficiency training. So I would say there's actually a bit of a gap there, and it would be definitely worthwhile looking to address that and making resource efficiency training a bit more regular for people that have been in your organisation for a longer time. So yes, I think Joe's just sharing those results with you, and then we'll move on to take a couple of questions. So if you've got any questions, make sure you just pop them in the box there. I think we've got a couple that have come in so far.
Yeah, so we've got a question actually. Somebody's asking, they've tried to engage with staff, but there's a small group of people that are quite negative, and they think that this puts off other people in the organisation. So they're just wondering what would you recommend to try and get these people on board?
Right, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, this can happen, nearly with every staff engagement campaign, and we tend to call these people blockers. And again, it's not necessarily through any kind of malicious act that these people don't want to be involved. I would definitely stop and think about the 4 E's, and have you given everybody everything that they need to be able to enable to make their behaviour change? Are you doing everything to exemplify it and to encourage it? And if the answer is yes to most of these, then I think it's a really good way to get them involved is to actually include them in some of your, say, Green Team meetings, or even give them some responsibility. And I think by involving them in the process and the initiatives, you're going to have much less of a chance of them blocking things and being quite negative as far as a campaign. So that's what I would suggest. It can be difficult, but don't be disheartened. There's always people change their behaviour at different rates. So somebody might change their behaviour quickly and somebody might change their behaviour slightly more slowly, but don't be disheartened. Perhaps sit down in a really engaging way. Definitely don't preach to them or have any negative words with them, but maybe sit down and ask them, if there's anything that you could be doing to make this new change easier for them. So.
Okay, we've got another question here, more about budget. So how do people convince their senior management to allocate a budget for staff engagement activities? Yeah,
I mean, arguing for any budget can be a challenge, especially with the downturn that we've had of previous years. But I think it's really important to remember that staff engagement isn't really a capital investment, so you're really just asking for some investment in time for somebody to get to dedicate themselves to engage staff. And I think it's important to, as I said, focus on quick wins. You want to be able to demonstrate to your senior managers and to people in the organisation the effectiveness of staff engagement. So identify all of the things that you want to address, and then definitely pick the ones that you feel are going to be the most simplest to launch, and focus on them, and hopefully you'll see some really good results, and that will really sell the benefits of engaging staff. And of course, I've gone through some of the free resources that we have available as far as Green Team and staff training. But what I'm going to move on to next is much more about kind of campaign materials, so posters and stickers and labels, which is obviously the kind of really fun stuff that will actually get people going. So I think that focus on quick wins and make sure that you're using as much of the free resources out there as possible from ourselves or from any other organisations.
Okay, shall we carry on?
Yeah, we'll move on. So excellent. So the third kind of aspect of engaging staff is about running campaigns. So the first two, Green Teams and staff training, was about putting the foundations in place so that any changes that you're asking are going to be much more sustainable. And by running campaigns, once you've got those building blocks in place, you're going to keep things fresh and you're going to keep things moving, and that there's definitely going to be momentum behind everything that you do. And so a campaign, it's very important that when you run a campaign, for it to be successful, is to stay focused on one issue. Don't ask people to change too many behaviours at once. This can seem a bit frustrating. You obviously want people to just genuinely become more resource efficient as soon as you've launched things, but it's important to know that people don't necessarily take on too many new behaviours at once. And as I mentioned at the start, it can take up to 66 days, the research has shown, for somebody doing something every day for it to become a habit. So if you do keep that in mind, a good window is to maybe focus on a single change for say 2 to 3 months. And that can seem like a long time, but if you start to break it down, which is what I'll do when I talk through the specific steps of running a switch off your lighting campaign, you can see how, in actual fact, those 2 months can move along quite quickly. Now, just because you're focusing on one issue for 2 months, it doesn't mean that you can't then repeat that. I wouldn't suggest repeating it straight away on the following 2 months. You would be much more beneficial to launch something new, which is going to be much more kind of new and interesting to people. But definitely think about moving back to previous campaigns at regular intervals. You want to make sure, for your campaigns to be successful, that you avoid really busy periods. So depending on the type of organisation you are, say for instance the hospitality sector, this is probably one of your busiest times of year right now. So you want to make sure you kind of are capturing people at a time when they've got the capacity to understand what these new changes are and how they can be involved. You want to make sure materials are fresh and engaging. And that might mean changing things up regularly. So if you're using posters on a notice board or on the back of toilets or around your organisation, make sure you're thinking to change them regularly, because you don't want things to drop into the background. And you want to make sure that you communicate success regularly. So even if you're not quite hitting the targets that you expected, don't focus too much on that. Focus on any change that you have had, and that you want to make sure you're selling a really good, positive story anytime you can. Now, on screen now is an example of a kind of campaign plan that you could use. So it just shows you here in the 2-month windows, you might launch your Green Team and focus on generally the benefits of being resource efficient and why you're launching your Green Team. You might then focus on what we're talking about today, which is saving energy using your lighting more efficiently. And again, moving on through the different types of resources that you use through water, waste, and again back to energy. So you could use this as a kind of template, and using your action plan and any initiatives that you've come up with as a result of your Green Team, and you can break it down into kind of a campaign plan and what you're going to focus on. And as I've kind of highlighted already, as far as your campaign messaging, you want to make sure that things are extremely clear. Don't let anybody have to wonder what it is that you're asking them, and test anything you're putting out there with a small group of people. Ask them, what do you make of this? How clear is this? Is it simple? Is it jargon free? Do you understand exactly what I'm asking for you and what action you have to take? Make sure you're selling the benefits. So the benefits of increased costs in the organisation, increased profits, job security, anything like that. It's really important to make sure you highlight those. And again, if we think back to Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne, you want to remember that your audience is going to be different. So you want to think about all the different ways that you can engage with them and all the different channels that you can use, whether it be email, notice boards, one-to-one, drop-in sessions, brown bag lunches, anything like that. So we're just going to run another quick poll, and this is our final poll, and it's just to understand whether or not you run resource sufficiency campaigns in your organisation at the moment. So it seems to be the most popular at the moment is the answer sometimes but not regularly. So I can really understand that, because it's really hard to make sure you've always got a pipeline of campaigns, but hopefully today has given you some ideas of how you can kind of set them up and make sure you don't lose that momentum. So I think we'll close that poll now, and Joe's just going to share that with you. So the outcome was 38% of people have said yes, they do run resource sufficiency campaigns regularly, which is absolutely excellent. Really pleased to hear that. And hopefully, I mean, I'm going to show you some of the resources we've got, and perhaps they'll be still of use to you. And then the other 63% are saying sometimes but not too regularly. So again, you might want to think about doing that more regularly now. So I'll just pop the screen, the slides back on screen. They should be coming back on now. Seem to be having a bit of a delay with that at the moment. There we go, I think that's them on. Nothing like some technical difficulties. So now I'm just going to run through running a switch off lighting campaign. So again, using some of the information I've already said to you about focusing on an 8-week or 2-month schedule, we can look to actually break down the steps that would be involved in running a specific campaign, in this case a switch off lighting campaign. So if we look at the first week, it's about introducing your campaign. So that's not necessarily about actually launching your campaign. There's a bit of groundwork to do first. And you want to think about using all the communication channels again that you have available to you for introducing your campaign. And by introducing it, you want to make sure you're outlining what's coming up. Will there be any new signages around your organisation? Will you be putting new posters up? Is there any going to change to any processes? Just outlining everything there really clearly. You want to outline the behaviours that you're going to expect from people, again in a really fun and engaging style. And you want to outline the benefits of that new behaviour change. And of course, any campaign targets is really important, and those should be measurable, so by a certain percentage, by a certain date, or any other targets that you want to include, because those will give you the kind of things that you can report against throughout your campaign. And so it's really important to kind of gauge the mood and attentiveness and the capacity people have when you introduce your campaign, and choose the right moments to do that. So once you've introduced your campaign, you can now start to get everything in place before you start to launch your campaign. So for switching off lighting, you'll be looking to label your lighting and starting to display posters and stickers throughout your organisation to reinforce the messages that you'll be including in your campaign messaging. And as I mentioned right at the start, labelling your lighting can seem like a really simple step, but it's absolutely critical to enabling people to understand what they can and can't do.